Okay, welcome back to this PD session on court interpreting and the recommended national standards. We're now going to have a look at the 5 different scenarios that are in the handout and see what our experts have to say about them. Okay, so our first scenario, you have arrived at a hearing. The only information you have received from the language service provider is that the case is about domestic violence. What can you do to find out more about the case, if anything? What do you think?
Well, I would go back to the language service provider to provide me with more information and to make sure that I have all the proper information, especially, again, back to being culturally safe and to make sure there's no conflict of interest in play as well.
Yeah. And what would you do, Anya, if there was no briefing from the language service provider?
I always like to push back. I don't like to walk in blind. I need to be prepared before I do a job. So I will push back and ask for that information and then provide them reason why. And I'll bring up the recommendation and my Aussit Code of Ethics as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the recommended national standards, Standard 24, tells us that the briefing is the responsibility of the party who have booked the interpreter. My apologies. So it would be either a prosecutor or defense lawyer. So the interpreter should ask them for the briefing and also ask them for the time to read the documents. If, however, it doesn't happen, there is always an option to involve the judge and tell them that you didn't have time and you are struggling.
Oh, Paul Miller. Yeah,
I guess that's really important to remember that, we can always go back and ask the judges for that information. And if you're getting that pushback.
Yeah, cool. So in terms of that responsibility, like Ludmilla says, it rests with the person who booked you, but you've got different avenues and opportunities if you're not getting it straight away.
Yeah, that's right. And so it is standard number 24.
Yeah, and super important to know the names of the people you're interpreting for. Like
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the next one. Scenario 2. You have been interpreting in a hearing, sitting next to the defendant in the public gallery. However, the hearing has been going on for 2 hours and you're tired and cannot concentrate. The magistrate has alerted you earlier on that you can ask for a break, but you're not sure how to do it. What will you do, Anya? What will you do, Ludmilla?
We practiced it, and it's really important to raise your hand and say, "Excuse me, Your Honor, the interpreter requires a break."
Yeah,
Ooh, nice
absolutely. Yeah, nice third person. No, I absolutely agree. And this is in compliance with the recommended standards, which say that you do have to interrupt the proceedings and draw the magistrate or the judge's attention to the fact that you need a break if they have forgotten, because it's also part of the section dedicated to the judge's responsibility to offer interpreter a break or let them know in advance that they can ask for a break. So in this scenario, for example, if the magistrate has forgotten about the interpreter needing a break, you can address them just as you, Lavinia, did. Also, this standard 9.5 suggests a break every 45 minutes.
I was thinking 2 hours sounded really hardcore.
It's a long time to interpret. Interpreters will suffer from fatigue. Their concentration will waver, and the quality of interpretation will suffer as a result.
Yeah. And it's so important to be accurate in everything that we say and do.
That's right.
So,
That's right. So that's, yeah, we need to ask for a break.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to scenario number 3. So the magistrate has been speaking loudly and clearly when addressing the witness. However, when the magistrate addressed a lawyer, they both spoke too fast for you to keep up, and you have omitted some information. What will you do in this scenario?
I would ask them to, pause and I'd actually tell them to slow down so I can make sure that I'm making sure that I'm accurate with my message and the message that's been conveyed between the magistrate and the lawyer. So so I'd stop them and ask them to slow down between each other.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right in doing so. Now, the recommended standards actually look at this situation from two different perspectives, that of a judicial officer, and that is standard number 17, that says that it's a duty of a judge to slow down, a judge or a magistrate. But the other perspective is that of an interpreter, and it is standard number 20. It's a duty of the interpreter to raise the issue with the judge. So don't just try to struggle in the hope that they will finish soon and it'll go away, but do as you, Lavinia, have suggested.
And it's okay to stop them if it's too fast. Like,
yes,
I'm just thinking to so many of my mob that might be too embarrassed to sort of put their hand up and say something. It's okay. This is your profession. It's okay for you to stop them.
And the court has to provide interpreters with professional working conditions. If you can't keep up, you cannot interpret.
Okay, scenario 4. During a hearing, the defendant's lawyer has asked you to sight translate a legal document. You haven't seen it before, and it seems very technical. What will you do and why?
Again, I would, raise my hand and stop it right there and ask them to stop because, first of all, I'd need a break and to be able to look at the document. And if I don't, I'll need to have my quiet space and my quiet time and my internet access to be able to maybe search some words that I might not understand, do a bit of a quick glossary. And if I still don't understand the legal term, then I would probably ask to withdraw from the job and ask someone who's more qualified in that legal jargon. But I guess it'll depend on the situation on the day. I might be able to understand enough to go back in and carry on after I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's always a good idea to say that this is something that cannot be done. And the recommended standards recognize it. For example, standard number 26 says specifically, the lawyers cannot expect the interpreters to sight translate what they call sight unseen. That is a document that the interpreter hasn't seen before. It acknowledges that you need time to prepare. And if a document is too technical, like here, a lease agreement, a phone contract, insurance, superannuation, these documents have to be translated. So they have to be translated properly by a translator rather than quickly sight interpreted on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that often interpreters are encouraged to say, well, let's just get you to read out the document line by line, like the lawyer or whoever it is, and I'll interpret it. And that gives us a chance to clarify the terms for you to check understanding as it happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think if a document is of a reasonable level of difficulty, it is a possibility for a lawyer or whoever else wants to read the document to actually read it out in smaller chunks with the interpreter having this document in front of them and attempting interpretation. But again, I want to stress that the difficulty is that legal documents are challenging for sight translation for anyone.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at our
Okay.
last scenario. Scenario 5. You have been asked to interpret in a trial. However, you are not certified, but have done a bit of training and are registered with a service. Should you be interpreting? What are the considerations to be taken into account? And ultimately, whose decision is it if you can interpret for the trial or not?
Interesting.
You reckon?
So yes, I could interpret if I wasn't a certified interpreter. What sort of consideration can be taken into account? I guess how long I've done interpreting for, whether I've done any interpreting training in the legal setting. And the ultimate decision actually comes down to the judge. So, and if there's like no other people that, is qualified or they've sourced out all their resources, then, that's when I could step into that interpreting role.
Yeah. And again, you're absolutely right, spot on. It's up to the judge to decide whether an interpreter is suitable or not. There should be obviously checking first if there are other interpreters available and what it will take to get another interpreter who might not be located in the right place. There is a question, of course, about a competence, because you've got to try and evaluate your own competence. Do you know enough about legal interpreting? Have you ever observed interpretation in court? What about the context and the content of the case?
Absolutely.
And these are the consideration. Maybe there are other uncertified interpreters who have more experience than one does. But in the end, it's up to the judge to accept or not accept whoever is what the standards called a suitable person.
Yeah.
I wonder if an extra follow-up question to that scenario might be, if you then find yourself not keeping up during the trial, what do you do? If there is an issue of competence and you're not that comfortable, not that experienced, and maybe the lawyers aren't great at slowing down and using plain English.
That's right. Yeah. So there is always time to pull out.
Yeah.
You can agree. I mean, you should not be coerced into it interpreting. And if you feel that you are not doing an adequate job, and you are the only one who will really know. So there is always time to pull out.
And I guess there's no shame job in pulling out if you're
No.
not keeping up and being able to understand what's been going on, especially if you haven't been in that setting before.
That's
So,
right.
if you're feeling that you're not competent enough, you're not feeling that this is what you can do, it's okay. There's no shame job. Pull out, because it's better to have good, accurate meaning being transferred than not.
And definitely talk to the judge, right? Like it's their job to make sure that everyone has equal access to justice and understanding what's going on.
Absolutely.
And we know that there aren't enough legal interpreters for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages. So that's why we are trying to work together, particularly in those situations where people aren't that experienced. And aren't feeling competent. Which I guess then brings us to our last few slides to talk about what there are in terms of resources out there for legal interpreters. We've got these recommended standards which give responsibilities and give us great context and who else we can rely on. But of course, a lot comes down to the interpreter building themselves up and learning to be a better legal interpreter. Now, there aren't heaps of things out there at the moment available to interpreters all over Australia, but this is what we came up with as a little bit of a list. So there are the links here and in the handout to the recommended national standards. So hopefully after today, everybody feels like that is a good resource just to understand the roles and responsibilities leading up to interpreting in the court, as well as during crunch time when you're in the middle of interpreting in a court or a tribunal. Ludmilla, we noticed there is a feedback form available trying to inform the courts on how they're going that interpreters can fill out.
Right. Mm-hmm. Is that in the recommended standards or?
No, but it's related to the recommended national standards, I believe.
Right.
Through the Opted
Okay.
website.
Okay. This is something different, but indeed it is a new committee led by Professor Sandra Hale, and of which I am a member. And this committee is going to examine interpreters' court experience with the recommended standards, especially in cases of non-adherence to the recommended standards by any participant in court. So this is it's an online form, and interpreters are invited, are encouraged to report such cases. So this
it
way,
becomes a bit of a live document.
that's right. It's a live document that is going to be monitored and analyzed every couple of months, 2 or 3 months perhaps, to see what we can report back to the Judicial Council for Cultural Diversity that initiated and published the recommended standards.
Yeah. So in terms of dictionaries and glossaries, there's the Legal Literate app, which is an app that you can download on your phone. Ludmilla, have you used that before?
No, I don't think so. No.
I have it on my phone here. It has a
Yeah.
little orange logo. You
Right.
can look it up.
Okay.
The other great resource is the Plain English Legal Dictionary that was developed by ARDS, AIS and NAJA, which is all related to criminal law in the Northern Territory, but has a great resource in terms of obviously the legal words that are listed, plain English definitions, as well as some stories at the end that help talk you through that whole legal criminal process from arrest or the incident right through to sentencing. What have we got in the way of legal interpreting courses? So Anya, you know a little bit about the AIS one?
I know that AIS have
you're on mute
in-house
still.
Oh, but I unmuted myself.
There we
Can you
go.
hear me now? So I know that AIS has in-house training, and I think recently, I guess, after my time at AIS, they now take, especially in Darwin, they take people through the courthouse and go through the whole process through there. When I was doing my legal training, I remember going out and doing on-the-job observation of people interpreting in court, and just being an observer and how it all sort of structured and worked, and understanding, everything that's happened inside a courthouse as we approach the bench and things like that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do that pretty much in any courthouse as long as it's open proceedings. Most are. The occasional case is closed court.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the questions during the live webinar, I think. So there are other services that it's always worth asking the service that you work for what opportunities there are. The courts are pretty encouraging for interpreters to come in and do professional development. There's also a course available through All Graduates, an online course, and AUSIT have offered professional development courses in legal interpreting before. So get in touch with us, the IIP team at NATI, if you're interested in some of those opportunities. And then mentors, right?
Absolutely.
We had a few on our live session the other day. There are some incredible interpreters who are doing this work every day, every week, who are amazing to tap into.
And reach out to those people, because, they know the ropes, they understand you know, it's important to be connected to them, especially in your own language group.
Yeah. Okay, and if you do have other resources that you've used to get across legal interpreting, anything about the legal systems, please let us know about them so we can share the links with other interpreters. Okay, so that's the end of our session. Thanks for watching these and following along. And a big thank you to Ludmilla Stern from the University of New South Wales for collaborating with us on this.
And thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Lavinia, for inviting me and for having this very exciting conversation, this dialogue together. And I hope that our listeners, our viewers, really benefit from what they hear and feel empowered in this very important profession that will help them in working for their communities and with their communities.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have any feedback, any questions, any suggestions about future PDs that you'd be interested in seeing run as a live webinar or as a recording, please get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.